Good morning. How's everybody? Good. If you're not already inspired by that service around Martin Luther King, you're not with us, right? Right? So I'm going to try really hard to make some connections with that beautiful service and the letter from the Birmingham jail. Because I think you will see some things this morning now that resonate with what Dr. King had to say in that jail. So if you think of that as we go along, that'd be great. My name is Gail. I'm a former college professor. I'm a mom. I'm a grandmom. I am not a Middle East scholar. I'm not a historian. I don't set policy for Israel-Palestine. I'm a teacher, and that's what I'm here hopefully to do with you today. So we're not going to talk about Trump's peace plan. Nope. We are not going to talk about high-level policy decisions. Well, I'm going to try to tell you the story of my interaction with this issue, is Israel-Palestine, with the occupation. By the way, it's the longest occupation in modern history. Let me say that again. It's the longest occupation in modern history. What you've been looking at on the screen are some photos. I'm going to leave it up there for just a few minutes, Marks, in case you haven't paid yet attention yet, of the wall, which is part of the story that I hope to tell you today, in Bethlehem. And the wall has been pretty much up for most of the occupation around Bethlehem, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the apartheid that's taking place all through the West Bank. And I'm going to give you the most up-to-date information that I have been able to find about that, so that you walk away today hopefully inspired, first by Dr. King, but also by what I'm going to share with you today. And second, by a sense that there is power in numbers, and there is power in doing things together in community. So I want to say that I'm going to say some hard things today. I'm going to say some things that are hard to hear and that sometimes get me choked up. I have to confess that listening to the letter, because I was making so many connections with what I just saw in Palestine in November 2025. So let me tell you, so to get a feel for that wall, I'm not going to talk further about that. So let me tell you a little bit before we start the PowerPoint and how we're going to do this. I'm going to show you some slides for about 42, 43 minutes, a little flexible. I know, you can do it. And if you have questions or ideas you want to share, I ask that you hold them to the end. Because if we start on a big conversation, we won't get through it, right? And I have so much I want to share with you. So let's try to do that, okay? I want to start by telling you that I've been involved with this issue since 1988. I'm old, right? And let me tell you how. In 1988, I was going to a Presbyterian church in Wilmette, Illinois, outside of Chicago. And 4 Jewish women came to our church one morning. And they were from a group called Not in My Name. And they had a story to tell about this place called Palestine, where there was an occupation of their land going on. These Jewish women wanted to tell the story and to tell us Presbyterians, they are doing bad things, not in my name. And I never forgot that, I tell you. I still carry those 4 women with me, right? And now that group still exists, along with many other Jewish groups, and it's now called Not in Our Name, so they have collectivized the resistance to what Israel has been doing. So I started back then. I did a lot of thinking and talking and reading. You know what they say about, what is it Dr. King called them, white moderates? What we first do is join a book club and read. That is exactly what I did, right? But then the opportunity, I had moved to Florida and the opportunity came to go. So I went to the West Bank, never been to Gaza, and we won't talk too much about Gaza today, because I've never been there, and these are my stories, right? But we did have an opportunity to go to the West Bank in 2013. So that was 12 years ago, right? And I said, I had trauma then, and my daughter is here, and she will say, trauma, yeah? I came home with a lot of PTSD. Tear gassed, and seeing a lot of the things that I could not believe that I had seen. So what took me back, and I went all over the West Bank, I should say, Ramallah, Hebron, Jenin, Nablus, Bethlehem, of course, all over the West Bank, and Jerusalem, of course. But that was 12 years ago. And what brought me in November, just this past November, 2 months ago, why did I go then? 2 reasons. First of all, when I was there in 2013, I went to this really cool little school called House of Hope Vision School. And it is a school that teaches nonviolence and trauma-informed curriculum to Palestinian children. I saw it in 2013. I wanted to go back and see those kiddos. I'm a teacher after all. And I also wanted to see how the teachers were delivering this kind of program. What was the cement behind that? And guess who is the main anchor for nonviolence education in many West Bank schools for Palestinian children? This morning, Dr. Martin Luther King. Yes. So that was one reason I wanted to go back. I wanted to go to El Azariah, which Christians call Bethany, to see the House of Hope again. The second reason I wanted to go is because across my news feed, and I keep up with this as much as I can, this issue, was a call to a conference in Bethlehem called the Kairos Conference. It's a conference offered by Palestinian brothers and sisters, and it was called the Call to Costly Solidarity. Listen again, costly solidarity. We're going to talk about that. They were calling for us to help, because you know what? We're out of time, friends. We are out of time. So I know a lot of you are thinking, gosh, don't we have enough troubles in our own country? Aren't there so many issues? We heard a lot about ICE this morning. Yes, and that call to justice is connected to the Palestinian people. And so I'd like to try to make that case for you today. You with me so far? Okay, yeah, we're gonna zip through some slides, and Mark is gonna take my nods to turn the slides so that we can stay on track and stay on time. Still waiting. So there are, I'll just keep talking, but see if you can pull up the, so there are 3 parts to this talk. The first part is what I'm calling the facts. And that's a little on the long side because I think you deserve to hear the facts on the ground right now. And we're going to focus particularly on apartheid because I understand you're considering an apartheid-free communities vote at your annual meeting next week. And so I'm going to show you what I saw and tell you a few stories with people who shared with me on the ground. I'll say that any stories that people told me, the drivers are great storytellers, but I didn't trust totally everything they told me. I always went back. I'm a college professor, right? I'm a researcher. I went back and double-checked facts so that you can believe them and trust them. The second is the call, which I just told you from the Kairos Conference. And there's some interesting connections between the Kairos call for solidarity and the apartheid-free communities movement, which I'm going to tell you about in a bit. And then finally, the hope. So even if you're sort of appalled in the first 10, 15 minutes by what I'm going to share, hang in, because there's hope. We can never give up hope. And some of that hope resides in us, and some of it resides in the Palestinian people, which I will show you. So I wanted to, if you can get me out of there, the map is I'm right, solid in the middle. I just want to show you what it looks like, just for those of you who have not seen the map. Israel is in brown, the West Bank is green, and Gaza is red, right? Israel is the size of roughly New Jersey, right? The West Bank is the size of Delaware, and Gaza is the size of a city like Detroit or Philadelphia. It's twice the size of Washington, D.C. Now, if you hold those parameters in mind and you watch the news about the number of people murdered in Gaza, in a city the size of Philadelphia, hold that space in your mind. Yeah. So, roughly, casualties, and I'm using this slide even though it's from way back in October 6, 2025. You think, oh wait, that's pretty recent. Not so much. Now we're up to 71,000 estimated Gazans killed, and they're killing more every day. I don't have the rest of the up-to-date numbers. The reason I like this slide, and by the way, we're recording this, you're welcome to the recording. You can pull these slides and share them with whoever you want. The reason I like this is it's triple checked. The Gaza Ministry of Health, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the UN Office of Humanitarian Affairs. So I trust these numbers, even though October 6th, 2025, we're now in January and it's updated. I want to say too, outright, and I know this is a concern for many people when they first encounter this or when they've been dealing with it, this is not about Judaism. I'm a person of faith. I come from a faith community. I have a master's degree in religion. I study Judaism. I feel the faith community in Judaism is deep and profound, and there are thousands of Jews around the world who are disturbed and fighting back at what's happening in the occupation, even and especially inside Israel. And these are brave people of faith who are doing that inside of Israel. I gave a webinar last week online for whoever just wanted to pop in, and I have friends in Jewish Voice for Peace, the organization in DC, and a number of them showed up on the webinar, and just yesterday I got my third request for the recording from that webinar, and they are sharing it with the whole DC Jewish Voice for Peace chapter. And get choked up again. That's, to me, a real, thank you, God, right? Because that means I must have been okay. And many of the slides are similar. Okay. So we have to say that, but, however, two Jewish Israeli organizations inside Israel, Bethlehem, which is a news organization, and Physicians for Human Rights Israel, they have finally used the word genocide in their reports. This is huge, people, right? We've heard the word genocide all around the world being called by people who study genocide, but these are Israelis. And the Bethlehem report really got to me. The authors of that report said this is our genocide. Genocide is not crime committed by a small group. The whole society is recruited to it. Ours is a genocidal society. Harsh, right? So why should we care, right? I mean, we're over here, we've got enough to deal with. Well, this is why we should care. And for those of you who can't see all the fine print, 78% of Israel's arms imports since 2000 have come from the United States. 78%. They cannot do the genocide in Gaza, for example, without our support. 78%, right? And right now, there's a bill headed to the Senate, and this is one of what can you do as a community? $3.6 billion more are going to be voted on. It was already passed by the House, and it's going to the Senate this week. So that's why we should care, right? So, The facts. First of all, what I've noticed from 12 years ago to now is that we use the words. We use the real words now, like apartheid. When I was there 12 years ago, or remember when Jimmy Carter wrote that book, Peace Not Apartheid, I think it was in 2006, he was run out of town on a rail. How dare you use the word apartheid? But now, everybody uses the word apartheid. Why? Because it's in your face, you can't ignore it anymore, and I'll show you what I mean. These are the 5 areas that our Palestinian brothers and sisters have asked us to wake up and pay attention to. Apartheid, settlements, forced displacement, which they're now calling Gazification, ethnic cleansing, which is now a term that is used in the news feed, even in Israel, and genocide. Harsh, harsh words. But we have been timid, and because we have such fears of being accused of an arm of anti-Semitism when we try to speak truth to power. So, apartheid, yay, number 1 thing. What does that mean? That means these are the devices by which Israel restricts movement in the West Bank. This is a slide that we got in Bethlehem at the when I arrived there. I'll tell you a little more about those stories. Where the count in the West Bank, the size of Delaware, was 849 movement obstacles. Well, that was back in March. Now it's about estimated around 1,200. In other words, Israel is putting blocks up. So imagine if you live in this area, imagine that one day you come home and there's a yellow gate that will not allow you to get into your neighborhood. And imagine then you go around this way to the other side and there is a checkpoint with a military officer asking for your ID card that you in fact live on that street. And then imagine you go, wow, I don't have my ID card. I guess I'll go around this way, go here, and there's an orange gate. You are permanently orange gates, not allowed in your neighborhood that way. That's what it's like to live on the earth. I won't read you these and just try to, there's a great map on the Applied Research Institute, Jerusalem. I was gonna bring it, but I thought, I have to hang it up, to show you all of the bifurcations of the West Bank that you can see on the map and you can experience on the ground in a heartbeat. So here are a couple. As I said, the yellow gates, I didn't see those in 2013. I didn't see any yellow gates. Now they're everywhere. And they're very much locking in villages. They open and close at will. This is a yellow gate outside of a little village called Kisan. And in Kisan, the children have to cross that street to go across this way to their school. Well, that yellow gate has been closed for about 3 weeks. No reason. So now Kisan needs to figure out how to educate their children inside Kisan because they can't get to the school. If you try to move across there, you could be shot and you certainly will be arrested. So what? Who cares? We can deal with that, right? Well, here are some of the things that happen when you don't have freedom of movement. The ambulance is an interesting story. There's a young woman that I know from the school, House of Hope school in the West Bank, who was pregnant. She just had a baby in October. And she tells the story that they got to the checkpoint to take her to the hospital. She was in labor. And they detained them for a while. She's in labor, right? And then the soldier said, well, we'll let you through, but first you have to pose for a picture with us and smile. And that's what she had to do to get through the checkpoint. Now, this is not a stupid story that is floating around the internet. This is a woman I know who told me this story, right? There were several people detained at checkpoints, various throughout the West Bank, to come to the Christian conference in Bethlehem that I told you about. One speaker, they wouldn't let in at all, arbitrarily. They don't have to give a reason. They're the ones with the big guns, right? So they lock us in like sheep. One person from Bethlehem, farmer said. So as of this week, Israel plans to start work on a bypass road. And I'm really watching this because it's not far from El Azariah, where the school is, that will close off the heart of the occupied West Bank to Palestinians. And essentially, it'll essentially run a line right through the West Bank, so that there is no hope of a two-state solution. I'm not going to go there right now, but that's what the goal is. Okay. All right, part 2, settlements. What's a settlement? Well, a settlement is a Jewish neighborhood, if you will, a Jewish set of buildings that are typically built up on top of hills, as you can see. And they are illegal according to international law, right? Because this is Palestinian territory, even though Israel has slowly been encroaching on it through the last 70 plus years. There are now more than 700,000 illegal Israeli settlers living in the West Bank. 700,000. When I was there in 2013, there were around 500,000. So in 12 years, 200,000 more have moved into the West Bank. There are more stories around that. We'll get another slide. And that I could tell you. The largest settlement in the West Bank is now being annexed to Jerusalem. I'm coming from the checkpoint. I flew into Amman, Jordan, and then took a checkpoint across Jordan into the West Bank. So my driver who met me there said he said, see Mayadumim, which is this settlement right there, he said, see that? That's going to be annexed to Jerusalem. It's the ruling is currently in the Knesset, which is their ruling body in Israel. And that will increase the size of Jerusalem. I think Mayadumim is the largest landmass settlement in the West Bank. It's not the largest number of people, but it's the largest landmass. So what does that mean to us? Those of you who are Christian, what does it mean if Jerusalem no longer has a Christian presence? That's what our Palestinian brothers and sisters want us to pay attention to. Oh, that's very tiny. Sorry about that. The attacks are the other thing we could talk a lot more about. Attacks by the settlers on Palestinians have increased 100-fold. More than 260 attacks have resulted in injury or death since October 2025, wow. Right? And then there's Mike Huckabee. Did you know that Mike is our first evangelical Christian ambassador to Israel? We've always had Jewish people representing our interests. He's an evangelical. And his quote, I'm tired of hearing me say it, but I'll say it, I'll speak for Mike. There's no such thing as a settlement. There are communities, there are neighborhoods, there are cities. There's no such thing as an occupation. So that is what evangelical Christians are saying. So this morning in your church service, I listened to Dr. King's words, I have been disappointed in the church. Evangelicals are putting huge amounts of money in settlements in the West Bank. Where are we? We need the solidarity that they have, right? Defense Minister Israel Katz is reported to have said in a meeting, settler attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank do not constitute terrorism, but they're merely a disturbance of public order. Let's see. So I'm asking, not telling, so what do we call terrorism? What do we call terrorism? I got the definition. It was the best widely acknowledged definition of terrorism. It's on the screen. I'll let you read it. There are individual governments who have separate definitions of terrorism. The UN has a definition of terrorism, and that's part of the problem. Of course, we can't get together and decide what terrorism is. But there are 4 kinds of terrorism that I saw when I was there, the first time in 2013, but also this time in 2025. And we're going to whip through these. Is this terrorism? We visited a farm similar to Tent of Nations, if you've been there. So this is a smaller town in Beit Jala, the village of Beit Jala. This farmer there in the white shirt didn't want to tell us too much because he's terrified of his neighbors. You see around the backs, it's also hard to take pictures, right? Because they, you know, it's dangerous. It's not a fun-filled trip this time, for sure. Behind him is the settlement. There are his olive trees. They come at night and they uproot olive trees, or they hide behind olive trees and attack his workers. This woman in the black hair there, she's the mayor of Bethlehem, and she accompanied us out around Bethlehem. Is this terrorism? Or let's move to Jerusalem. We visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Last time there were military, IDF around the mosque, but now they're like tripled in number. They still don't go into the mosque, but they stay on the outside. Is this military terrorism, intimidation? Not only are they walking around, they're also doing tours around the campus of Al-Aqsa Mosque. And there you see, again, a surreptitious, because the IDF is walking with this group of Israeli tourists and rabbis, and if they saw that we took a picture, they would take my phone. So isn't a great picture, and it's from far away, but they walked right around our group, right this close. You know, that's really intimidating, pretty scary when you have one of those great big, I don't know what kind of rifles. You can go in the mosque now as a non-Muslim, which was new for me. And the reason he wanted to take us in is to actually, there I am in a lovely outfit. You have to cover yourself totally, right? And this is called Dome of the Rock, and there's actually a rock. I didn't know that before, right? And you can actually stick your hand in the hole there and touch the rock, which is a holy place for Muslims, right? But the Israelis are digging under the mosque to find the rest of what they believe is the city of David under that. And now there are cracks in the mosque as well as in the village around that. Last time I was there, I took a picture through, and you're welcome to look at any of these, through the hole in the Jerusalem gate. And that was the village of Silwan. Silwan, the village, is basically gone now, and now it's the city of David. And they're building an amusement park just around there, the city of David. Now we'll shift to Bethlehem. Stay with me. The good part is coming. This is the Church of the Nativity and the grotto. Now, the military police were not in the mosque, but they are in the Church of the Nativity. And that's new for me. And that's heartbreaking. You will notice, too, there's not another soul there, right? Bethlehem is decimated. There are no tourists right now, right? Because people are afraid. Is that military terrorism to be inside the church? I leave it to you. Here's the old city of Bethlehem. These are my photos, absolutely deserted. So again, without Bethlehem, is there Christmas? How can we pretend? I bought this little handcrafted nativity, which is the wall in Bethlehem. And so you see Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and all those guys, but the wall prevents the three kings from getting in. That's what we're dealing with, folks. That's it. So this is a view from my hotel room. So you see the settlement, very clear, right? Outside my hotel room. And I want to call your attention, for those of you who have never been there, these guys here, these are water tanks, right? And that's how you know a Palestinian home or business, is because they must conserve water. Why? Because the Israelis ration water, right? And most of the beautiful water goes to the swimming pools and the palm trees and the green grass of settlements. So the Palestinians need to preserve them. But the last time I was there, those water tanks were black metal. Let me tell you. Those water tanks were black metal. So I said to my driver, I noticed instantly when I was coming in that they were covered with this white band. So I said, what's with the white around the water tanks? And he said, the Israeli guard soldiers use them for target practice. So we have had to cover them with plastic because plastic is a lot easier to mend than metal. Now I thought, that can't be true. So again, academic that I am, I went back and I looked it up, and it is true, folks. It is true. They use a source of life, water tanks, and they shoot holes in them so the water comes out. So it reminded me of the South Pacific. Now I'm definitely aging myself. Let me see if I can find the song, You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. I was telling this story to a Peace Action Network friend in Lancaster, and he said, wow, someone told those young people who are military guards that that was okay, or someone's looking the other way. So listen to the lyrics from the South Pacific song. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. On to part 2, the call. So there we are in East Jerusalem for the Kairos call to solidarity. And the main reason for the conference, and we can't go into it in great detail, is the release of the Kairos 2 document. That's because there's a Kairos 1 from 2009. Again, pleading with Christians around the world to pay attention. And the title of the document is A Moment of Truth in a Time of Genocide. So there I am, and it gives you some idea of who showed up, right? You can probably guess. A woman from Chile, a woman from Sweden, me, and a woman from the Philippines.
Wow.
Kairos, what's it mean? It means the time is now, opportune moment. We can't wait to show our support any longer because Palestine is in the deepest trouble it's ever been in. And my sense is, I can't change policy, but my sense is I want to reach across those miles and say, we feel you, we love you, we support you. 23 countries represented, including the United States. And look at all the organization. World Council of Churches, Churches for Middle East Peace. I mean, everybody was there. Pax Christi from the Catholic churches in this country. It is an opportune moment. Next. These are some of the things we heard. Does anybody want to read the red? Just so that I'm not reading everything. Anyone? A good reader? Thank you.
I don't know if I'm a good reader though. We respect you, the people, but we do not respect your governments. You talk about human rights. We don't see it. It doesn't apply here. You raise our hopes by being here.
Gaza represents the moral compass of the world, and we have lost the moral argument. Gaza and the West Bank are symbols of the world's moral collapse. Next. Next, Mark. We don't have a lot of time to go through it. It's totally online. I hope that you read it. It is part of the apartheid-free community's embrace to understand the Kairos document. In fact, our representative in the United States to lead our delegation of the Kairos delegates is, in fact, the chair of apartheid-free communities. Her name is Allison Tanner. I think I might have a slide about that. But notice the words. The Palestinian Christians are using the real words: ethnic cleansing, genocide, forced displacement. I mean, it's hard. I know it's hard to hear. Yes. There she is, Allison Tanner. She's leading us. And just in case you didn't know, there are 1,034 groups in the country who have signed on to the apartheid-free communities. You got a little flyer in your bulletin this morning that give you some Q&A and some details. I will say I'm at Rock Spring, and we didn't know about apartheid-free communities 2 years ago when the UCC National were one of the first people to sign the apartheid. Did you know that? Of course, we UCC congregations are all independent and want to make our own decisions, but Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Methodists, they've all signed on. We didn't know about them, and that 2 years ago, we established a partnership with this little school, which I'll show you a slide about. And that's our contribution to solidarity, right? Because we give money every year, we do partnerships with them, and so on. So I want to take you out just so that you have a sense of some of the, and then we'll go to the hope, what you can do, whether or not you're a apartheid-free community. There's something individuals and groups can do, and I'm going to share some of those things. This is the border bit. So going outside, back to the checkpoint to get to Amman, to leave Israel, I should say West Bank, you have to go through a checkpoint to Israeli checkpoint to get into the West Bank and get out, in case you weren't aware of that. So there I am in a car. Again, you're not supposed to take pictures. I'm over here somewhere, and we're waiting behind this red barrier for no apparent reason, right? 2 hours we sat there in the car. But we were in a car. We were privileged, right? All Palestinians entering and leaving the West Bank must do so on those red chevron buses. That also is apartheid, friends. Right? They can't use cars, they must go through buses. So my guide on the Jordan side, he says, well, you think you're through, but look back. And we look back across this wall, and there's a brand new Israeli settlement right on the border between Amman, Jordan, and the West Bank. And so then he said, look over there, you see the Jordan River. And I said, where? I don't see any river. And he said, it's actually a dried up riverbed. And I said, why? And he said, well, it's because the Israelis have diverted the Jordan River for water for their settlements. So this morning, I borrowed a hymnal. We sang, Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside, bear me through the swelling current, land me safe on Canaan's side. There's no water in the River Jordan right now. Now, happily, there is a move to conserve it. Jordan is part of that, is to try to bring water back. But I'm not making this up, folks. Really, I'm not. So hope, third part, I'm almost done. So what, now what, I used to say to my students. Well, the one thing I noticed over and over the last 20 plus years is that the Palestinian people are resilient. They're not going anywhere. They want to stay. And that's Mutter Isaac, the theologian that we saw. He said, the one thing you guys can do around the world is help us stay. I'm going to show you a few ways to do that. Help us stay. We want to stay, right? So I bet you all know that the olive tree is a symbol of Palestine. I bet you might know that the watermelon is a sign of a symbol for Palestine because it has the same colors as the Palestinian flag. Maybe you didn't know that the cactus is also a symbol for Palestine. Palestinians use the cactus as a border for their property, signaling that this is a Palestinian home. The cactus is hardy, and it always seems to make a comeback when it's gone. Palestinians and cacti share a prickly determination to exist. So right now at Rock Spring, we're talking about a children's art exchange project around cactus art projects. So it's the kind of thing you do to say, we see you, we're here, and we see you, right? So other signs of hope. December 6th, right after I got back, there's Manger Square. Every Palestinian who was allowed in congregated in Manger Square, said, we're here, tourists, come back, we're here. And I watched it on YouTube, and I thought, oh, it's so fantastic. Madeleine Albright, I was reading at the same time. I think sometimes there are really only two kinds of stories, one ending in hope, the other despair, although it's not always obvious which is which. We need to err on the side of hope. Another sign of hope, did you read about this? There was a mass wedding in Gaza. 54 couples got married in the rubble, in the midst of, you can see it, in the rubble. Joyous, happy young people in their traditional garb. They're not giving up, even though we know there are bodies under the rubble. By the way, Munter's book, if you don't know the history and you don't know how we got to Hamas and October 7th, read Christ in the Rubble by Munter Isaac. The other book I forgot to recommend, that I need to recommend now as you're churning this over, Carolyn Karchay, who's a member of DC Jewish Voice for Peace. She wrote this book that has 40 reflections of Jews who have turned a corner and see things differently and write about their own personal stories. I talked to a young man the other night from Jewish Voice for Peace who came to my presentation, and he had his eyes open by going on a trip in December. These are good people, and they're right in their backyard. There's House of Hope. There's another sign of hope. Support the children. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I gravitate toward kids, as my daughter will tell you. I like kids, and kids need our support right now. So this school, and there are 3 or 4 others in the environs who need donations, let's face it, but they also need funny Vimeos, and they need, you can translate, Google Translate Arabic back and forth, and I do it all the time with these teachers. I don't know that I'm saying anything that makes any sense, but I trust Google to get me there, right? There I am with the kindergarten teacher, Zane. This is me, and this is one of the directors of the school, and she's wearing a prayer shawl from Rock Spring United Church of Christ. Just that gesture of the rock. She says, what do I do with this? Do I put it on the ground and pray on it? And she's surrounded by Muslims. I said, no, we don't pray on it. But you can if you want to, but you don't need to use it for that. So children. Inside Israel, there are these lovely little schools called hand-in-hand schools where Jews, and I will reframe it, this is from their website, they are Palestinians, not the generic Arab, which is how Israelis refer to Palestinians. But there are 6 of these schools now, and they learn together in peace. It's a wonderful thing. So hand in hand might be a partnership that appeals to you. UNRWA has, I listened to a Carnegie Endowment thing, UNRWA has stepped back up to learning programs in Gaza, and I think that's something worth supporting. I know that our government has withheld funding for UNRWA, but UNRWA is still there and supporting all the refugee camps in Gaza and the West Bank, and these people need UNRWA, and they have, I think, done a better job of vetting their workers, as Refugee International, Save the Children, all of them. That's a whole other story, but I can talk about it if you like. Yes. I also see changes in this population. Young Republicans are less happy with the with the amount of money spent on Israeli arms. You can read that for yourself. Even J.D. Vance himself is separating the notion of disagreeing with Israel with anti-Semitism. Even J.D. Vance. And what about Marjorie Taylor Greene? She also has distanced herself. So, I don't know, something seems to be happening. So what else? Well, you can support, I said children and schools. You can support Palestinian artists and craftspeople. You can order things like that, these little nativities, on Etsy. I know you do olive oil sales. That's a contribution. You can also support health initiatives. I'm going to give a little plug for Prosthetics for Palestine in a minute. This is my plug. March 8th, Rock Spring is hosting the Chuck Red Trio, And do you know the name Chuck Red? Have you read about it in the paper recently? Chuck Red, what is it?
He canceled at the Kennedy.
Yes, he canceled at the Kennedy Center in protest. And he's coming to little old Rock Spring, which was long before he became like a big deal in the newspaper. 3 p.m., March 8th, all the proceeds, it's free, but donations will go to Prosthetics for Palestine. There are literally thousands of children in Gaza without arms and legs. There's a charity, right? Mm-hmm. Then the mantra that they say in Palestine is come and see, go and tell. Take a trip, take a trip, take a trip. And one I would recommend is you have to see it to believe it, and you might not believe it just by me saying it, but once you go, you will believe it. The Churches for Middle East Peace is a wonderful organization that has a firm ground on how to do this, working with alternative travel groups in the West Bank. So here's a sort of an overall slide about what you can do. You can partner, you can accompany, you can amplify, and you can boycott, divestment, and sanction. For me personally, I am really trying hard with Amazon, Airbnb, and Booking.com. You can't do it all. It looks overwhelming, but these are the companies, Amazon in particular, that is providing the IDF with their cloud services. That's not enough to make you stop ordering from Amazon? I don't know what will. So one thing collectively, small thing, individuals, I have hope that we can be heard. And then finally, you know about the monks, right? The monks are walking, and they're walking, and they're walking, and they're coming from Texas to DC. They're due in DC in mid-February. You're nodding, you know this. Maybe there's something that Cleveland Park can do around the arrival of the monks. I know the Congregational Action Network is planning some of those things. This is the kind of thing that apartheid-free communities want congregations to get involved in and then report back. I personally am going to be sure I see these monks. You know, monks are typically, my son explained this all to me, monks don't do this. This is not what they do, right? They only come out and make themselves visible when they really feel the world needs them. And that's what they feel right now. They think, okay, the world needs us, we're gonna march. I think that might be it. That is it. Whew, okay, I don't know, how'd I do?